because I want to talk about the drama this week. And I don't want to be dramatic about it. And so you saw me attempt not being dramatic about it earlier this week whenever I was talking about it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to switch back to my screen over here. This is a screenshot I took last night. I hadn't seen it. Okay, so Cynthia Astle owns and runs Insight, which is a website where she does her own reporting. She used to work for United Methodist News Service. I don't know why she's not with them anymore. I've known for a long time that she leans super far left, but I liked her because when I was covering Bishop Carcano, I was of the mind that the institution of the UMC was behaving immorally, and so was she. So we were both wanting things to be brought out into the light and transparency, and I think that's something that she and I both still have in common. But what was exposed this last week was she and I have a radically different understanding of what's appropriate to publish or not. Her website publishes not just her news, but she has a number of commentators, one of whom being Reverend Richard Bryant of the Western North Carolina Annual Conference. He wrote a piece this last week. You saw the dramatic thumbnail with a person holding a semi-automatic rifle to another person's head, because the metaphor that the article used was terrorism. He did not, to be fair, I didn't say this in the video, he did not use the word Hamas. I don't think he even used the word terrorist. However, he did use the words human shields, fundamentalist, hostage. There were a couple of other words that definitely pointed towards the news cycle in Hamas right now, and put disaffiliators in the role of hostage-taking terrorists that are evil. You got to read the article. That what Cynthia Astle eventually pulled it, and I from the beginning said this shouldn't have been published. I didn't call Cynthia out by name. I don't have interest in ongoing feuds or anything like that, and I hope to get things worked out with Cynthia. But Cynthia heard. Actually, I tagged Insight on Twitter whenever I published my piece. I did call out the author, Richard Bryant, by name, because it was so heinous and unhinged that it just seemed, well, and I'll come back to the interpersonal thing, but I published my piece saying, this is just asinine. You cannot put this stuff out into the world. It's bad for discourse. It's super hateful, unhealthy, and unhinged. I said a number of words, and I meant them, and I still mean them today. I was also very clear I didn't want any harm to come to him. I believe in free speech. I believe that people should be able to say what they want without fear of physical repercussions. And so I stand strongly by that. I put out before I even saw this post from Cynthia, I put out a post of my own just saying, hey, if you're following me and you want to threaten the people that I highlight, go ahead and just unfollow me. Just unsubscribe. I don't want your support. I'm not going to do that. So there are going to be people, we need to talk about meaningful things without worrying about what crazy people are going to do about it. So if you're crazy, if you're a person that has a gun and wants to use it on people you disagree with, just go away. I can't have anything to do with you. It's too important. You can't be compromising what we're doing here. So anyway, here's the post that Cynthia made. After vicious right-wing backlash by the Reverend Rob Renfro and Reverend Jeffrey Rickman on YouTube and X, formerly Twitter, the Reverend Richard Bryant's essay that previously appeared in this space has been removed out of concern for the author's safety. As editor, I chose to publish Richard's essay because I thought the point he made was valid, that theologically we flawed human beings are all vulnerable to allowing ourselves to become hostages to ill-informed, ignorant beliefs. So that is not what he said in the article. I don't know if Cynthia doesn't know that or if she is crazier than I thought. I don't know how much of what she has said since then she thinks is true or if she's just doing damage control. What I'll say very flatly is the article should never have been published. Anyone who wants to be taken seriously as a good faith conversation partner would not publish an article like that. I think it was really bad judgment on Cynthia's part. I've been warned by other people, hey, Cynthia, she's just a crazy leftist. You cannot work with her. I don't want to believe that. I want to believe that Cynthia can be worked with. I would like to I like collaborating with whoever I can, especially if they have a concern for the truth. But the problem with this particular post is Rob Renfro had nothing to do with it. He never commented on anything that I'm aware of with respect to this guy at all. What happened is, as soon as I tagged her in it, I noticed that she commented on the interview I did with Rob Renfro, which if you didn't see it, go watch it. It's really good. I really enjoyed Rob. He's a fantastic guy. But we didn't say a thing about that article because it hadn't even been published yet. But she got on there and wrote a comment just like, this is completely inaccurate, this is gross. And then she roped Rob Renfro into everything from then on. So what that told me was Cynthia didn't even watch my critique. She just assumed that me and Rob were talking, and that's who the context of it. Rob had nothing to do with it. So the reason that I think it's worth highlighting right now is if I haven't done research, I just don't talk about it because I don't know. I mean, there is 1,000 different ways I could be wrong. It's embarrassingly wrong for her to drag Rob Renfro's name into this whenever he hasn't said anything. And he hasn't even defended himself. The guy's just used to getting dragged through the mud by progressives that hate him because they hate conservatives. So that's the first thing that should just make everybody understand that Cynthia. It was clear that the author of this piece was deranged, but I start thinking that anyone who publishes something like this is likewise deranged. It's just not appropriate. It's not something that serious adults can promote. And then when you start metaphorizing it and disconnecting it from its obvious plain meaning, that's crazy as well. So I don't know. Maybe Cynthia and I just can't be friends. I don't know. But I would like to think that if somebody's going to hold themselves as a journalist in any capacity, they have to care for what's true. And the way that she represented what he said isn't true. If you don't believe me, just go over to Chris Ritter's website, peopleneedjesus.net. Type in Insiders. I don't know what you would search for, but he's got it posted there, a scan of the original article. The other thing I need to say about that, I felt good about everything that I said in that, except at one point I went and looked at his LinkedIn account, and I also looked at his picture on the article that was there, and I said, this man needs help. One person wrote me and said, hey, it's really tacky to just make fun of someone for being ugly. And that was not my intent at all. You know, I don't think being ugly is not a sin. There's nothing wrong with being ugly. You can't help it. I think depending on who's looking at me and what day it is, I'm quite ugly. You know, I would hate to think that what it conveyed to me, what I thought I saw in the pictures was over time he's showing signals outwardly that he's not doing okay. If the words were not hysterical enough, it's like the beret guy. You remember the Holy Hex guy? He's wearing a beret on the floor of annual conference, and he's people tell you things by their outward portrayal sometimes. I know that we live in a culture where we say, oh, you can't assume anything about anybody by the way they self-present, but, you know, that's just not true. People tell the public what they want them to know about them by the way that they present themselves, by the way that they walk and the clothes that they wear. I'm telling you things about me with my hair and my face and my beard and my clothes. And so that's what I was remarking on with respect to the author. It wasn't making fun of him for the way that he looks. It seemed very clear to me from a number of different ways that the man is not doing well. I said a prayer at the end that I really meant. I wish good things for this man. I'm very concerned about him. What Cynthia Astle eventually said was that his article was pulled out of concern for his safety. According to him, I think, he got a call at home and a call at his church that he took as very threatening. Now, there are crazy people that threaten people, and that is within the realm of possibility. But also, I live in a world where I'm regularly hearing reports of people who claim to have been victimized, only later being exposed to have either wildly exaggerated what has happened or completely fabricated what has happened. So until a voicemail is played, I'm inclined to think that he's either being hysterical again, as he was in his article. Just, you know, if someone called him at the church, you know, don't call a pastor's house, I guess. But if someone called him at the church and said, hey, man, I'm taking issue with what you wrote here. I think it's wrong-headed. I think it's really hateful. As long as they're not calling him names and threatening him, I think that, you know, if you don't want people to call you at your church and respond to your public ministry, just don't say or do anything that people could take issue with publicly. But you know, this is part of being a pastor. I've gotten calls at the church with people who were not happy with me at all. I get my name regularly dragged through the mud online. it's just the name of the game. If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. I think I said on the video, I think he should get out of the kitchen anyway. I think it's just gone bad. Once you get to this point of saying the things that he said, it's just nasty and icky. I think you have to get out, not just for the sake of the connection, but for his own personal sake. If you're in a place personally where you're spending hours writing this thing and putting it out into the internet, like that is a cry for help. So I told you guys to reach out to his bishop at least and let her know. But also, I don't think there's anything wrong with maturely, kindly letting someone who wrote such a thing know that it isn't appreciated and that it's really harmful. Oh, the other thing I meant to say about it was I learned some more of his story after I published that piece. Apparently, there are a number of people who've been reading him for some time, and he's gradually gotten worse. And a big part of his deterioration has been, well, he doesn't seem to have been a particularly effective pastor. He gets moved around quite frequently, but he was given a church that had a theologically conservative disposition, which he obviously doesn't. And they disaffiliated while he was the pastor, which is just a huge slap in the face to him, has been really demoralizing. So there was one part of the article I couldn't make sense of around itinerancy, and apparently he's blaming the itinerancy for him being in that sort of position. So, I feel compassion for that, Also, but I mean, as I said in the review, it doesn't seem to me that he's a biblically recognizable Christian. He scoffs at a lot of things or calls them fundamentalists that I would just consider basic Christianity. I heard from one clergy in particular who saw his office at one point and said that there was nothing resembling Christianity in there, but he had a huge picture of Elvis Presley in there. And so he seems like a person who probably shouldn't have ever been in the pulpit, but he just is one of these that says, I have a strong call. And, he ticks the right boxes politically, and he leans left, and when you're trying to do a hostile takeover, you can't have any enemies to the left. And so that's how I'm explaining it for right now, but I sure feel for him, even though I think you should get out.